guys, my name is Michael and welcome to a new GTK tutorial. Today we are going to move on and we are going to learn new things, and of course we are going to learn new functions. And the functions which I'm going to introduce you today, the first one, it is called GTK lookup, and the second one is the GSignal name. What exactly does this function? Let's see. We have a function which returns GUint, takes two parameters, gchar const and of course gtype, and says given the name of the signal and the type of the object it connects to, gets the signal's identifying integer. So emitting the signal by number is somewhat faster than using the name each time. You will see what exactly it means. Also try the ancestor of the given type. So the type class specified as iType must already have been instantiated, for example using the gtype class reference, for this function to work, as signals are always installed during the class initialization. So in other words, you have to check the GSignal new for the tail of allow signal names, which is another story. Okay, so basically that being said, what do we need? I'm going to call this function. Let's see, you know what, I'm going to stop the object signals. I'm going to compile it and run just for a second. As you can see here, we have only those signals which in this case GTK window has. So I'm going to comment it, and now what it says, the documentation says it's a GUint. So GUint, let's say signal object ID. I'm going to call it signal object ID. It will be pointed to the lookup, and here we need, as you can see, the const gchar name and the gtype iType. What exactly means the const, which name exactly means this signal function? It is the name which is provided from every signal an object does have it. Like in this case, the GTK window has, as you already know, these signals, and of course if you go to object hierarchy and you go to GTK widget, because we talked a lot about GTK widget signals like delete, event and destroy, then once that you click there, these are those signals which basically you are working with. In this case, the delete event. So this is the name which you needed. Okay, so I'm going to pass this name right here, and the second thing which says it is the gtype iType, which in this case, of course, if I think you already noticed, it is about the GTK type window. And now, because we have the ID, let us print it. Print the ID of the delete event signal. It is, let's say, okay, delete event, I need to do something here to make it work. We need to escape it. Okay, it is %u new line character, and then let us print it, signal ID object. So let me see, what do we have here, what do we get here? Find object signal defined but not used. Okay, so GNU C unused, GNU C unused. Now let me scroll back down here and let me compile it and run it. And at this point we do have an ID which is 66. Now it is very important for you to understand something. Until now we learned that GSignal connect, swap, they return an ID. That ID, like I said, it is a unique for your application and belongs to this call. But the signal itself has also an ID, a unique ID, which has it all the time. and this ID basically belongs to a signal which you pass it. For example, now let me go back and compile it and run it again, and you will see that the delete event is 66. If, for example, we try to pass here the GTK button signal, which is the clicked, I'm not going to change the type, I'm going to let the window, and we check about this signal lookup, it will say 0 because it's wrong. It doesn't exist. For this to work, we need to basically pass its type, which is type button. And now we can see that GTK type button has a signal ID which is 99. The same story goes for the destroy, for example, signal, which means we need again the window, a GTK type window, because we need it for this type, which is 35. You see, now if we instead says widget, if we change the window with the widget like I do right now, you see, now you get something different. You see, delete event is 35. So it is very important to understand these things. If and the delete event, now watch, 66. Why? Well, it is true. And why it is working, I mean, if it's changed, if it is different, and why, well, you should already know that GTK window, it is a subclass from GTK bin, which is a subclass from GTK container, which is a subclass from GTK widget. So basically this signal belongs to GTK widget, but you can apply it on GTK window, isn't it? So doing this, then the type you pass here, it is the right type. What do you think it happens if you say GTK bin? Let me compile it and run it and see what could happen. As you can see, it says 66. Yes, because it's the same story. Okay, whatever. Anyway, this is the way how you will work. You are working with this type, and this is the way how GSignal lookup works. It does return like the here the return says the signal ID identifying the number. You see, the signals identifying number, or 0 if no signal was found. So this number which you have, it is not a random number, it's a number which belongs to GTK to delete event signal, sorry. And that's the way how it's working. Now the next thing which we can check, the next function which I said that I'm going to introduce you, it is called GSignal name. And the GSignal name is a function which does const gchar, which means we don't have to take care about its memory, because it returns const and so on, and takes one signal ID. So the signal ID which takes, it is the signal ID which basically you need to provide it so that you get or to retrieve its name. Given the signal identifier finds its name, two different signals may have the same name if they have different types. That's very important for you to understand. We did indeed got the destroy signal or the delete event signal. We did the same number, which was 66, but there are other cases where you can get different names. Okay, they can have different name from the same type for different types. Okay, so parameter is the signal ID and return the signal name. So let's see how it's working. Which means we need basically, I'm going to create no, I'm going to do right here. We need a const gchar signal name, I'm going to call it, and here I'm going to call signal name, and we need to point it to this function, and of course we need to pass as parameter the signal object ID. And now because we have it, let us print it. Print the name of the signal with the ID of the signal %s, sorry, %s, with the ID %u. And now let us print them. So we need a name first, so the signal name, and the signal object ID. Now I'm going to remove this part because we don't need it. At this point we have the name of the signal with the ID. Now let's see, what do we have now? The name of the signal, it is delete event. You see, it's true. So basically you converted back from what I did here. Let me go back. You converted back from its ID 66 to delete event, which is true. Now if I change the signal object with 35, which I guess it is the destroy event, you see, because I know it is. Now it should say the signal ID will be now destroy. It should be now destroy, sorry. And it says it's delete event because we are printing the name, you see, right here. But I made a mistake because I had to put it right here, 35. Now you will see that, okay, the variable ID not used is true, so I'm not going to use it. And now, okay, this call also we don't need it. And now at this point what we have a signal name, and the signal name we are retrieving the signal name from the ID 35. I know that ID 35 is destroy, and now it should say destroy and 35. You see, destroy, and everything works fine. No matter which one you pass it, as long as you pass a valid one, it will work. But you never do something like this to remember some random numbers which you think that they are belong to some signal. Pass just the signal ID which you get it with a GSignal lookup, and don't try to make work with random numbers which you think you know them, because you never know in the next release. This one is the grab focus, I think, or no, it's a button release event. Okay, because you never know what happens in the future with these numbers and how they could change. So to make it properly work, you should do it like I did. In this case, you have a signal ID, object ID, and the signal name. For the ID to get the ID of the signal, work with GSignal lookup, and then you get the ID. And once that you have the ID, then with the GSignal name you pass that ID and you're fine. Now I want to show you something which is very important, just to be 100% sure that you understand. I'm going to save the ID of the GSignal connect, which is returned from the function, just to be sure that you understand that's a different one. So I'm going to say guint sig ID, or handler ID, I'm going to call it handler ID. And now because we have it, let me print it, and I'm going to show you something very interesting. I'm going to do it GSignal name. Yes, this is the only thing which I need the signal name. Okay, so now we have the name from the handler ID and not from the object ID. You will see something very interesting. Okay, conversion from GU long. Oh, okay, we need a GU long, which is quite complicated now, but whatever. GU long, and here we need to change also to long U. Okay, now of course we need a conversion as well, so guint, because we have it, we can cast it. Guint, sorry, we need a T right here. And now I hope it's working, but it's not working because now we need to go to and expect the longest int, but the type is guint. Okay, so we need to drop the L right now. And now, as you can see, the signal name, it is called unrealize, which is definitely not the delete event, isn't it? And that is because we just tried to work with the wrong ID, because like I said, the ID you get it here, it's a unique ID which belongs to the whole this function where it is involved, the window, delete event, and the callback itself, and not about the delete event signal which has its own ID. They are different, so don't mess the things when you work with those with these functions. GSignal lookup, it's looking for the ID on which signal it has, and it doesn't look up for a signal which you get it from the signal connect, which is wrong. Never do it. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to put everything back in order to have it work like it should, like right now. And now it should be okay. We don't work with the ID, so we don't need to save it. We are not interested in the ID, and now we have the delete event and ID 66, which is fine. Basically, now if you, for example, let me make some changes to this function for a second, because this will be very important. And I'm going to say here guint ID, whatever ID, it's fine now because we have it. The next thing, let's say ID and then GSignal look up, and now we need the name, and the name I'm going to say now query. You already know from the last video, and here is the signal name, and of course the next thing which we need a type. Now because we have the type, we have the name, basically we can print it, and I'm going to make some changes here. I'm going to say ID, it is %u, and of course what do we need? The name, yes, and the name, it is also %, oh sorry, wrong, %s. And now we have the GSignal name. What do we need? The next one, the next thing which we need is the ID, and the next thing which we need the GSignal name function. So I'm going to pass it here. I'm not going to store it, sig and another variable name, and here I'm going to pass the ID as well. So what do we have now? We are basically querying for the signals to find out which signals are available for the object based on the type which you provided. Once that you provide this type together with the name which you get it, you can with the help of the signal ID GSignal lookup get the ID, and then because we have the ID we print it, and of course we print the name of that ID which we have. Let me compile it and see if it's working. Yes, it's working, but I'm not using. And now I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to check the GTK type window and the GTK window in the find object signals, how it's working from the last video. At this point, okay, it is not aligned, no problem. I'm going to make some changes. Let's say %s right here minus, I don't know, 25. I need to align the ID better from the signal name. Yes, and now we have, you see, K changes, the ID is 154, and it is K changes. You see, we got the names and we got its ID. So basically K changed has this ID, set focus had this ID, and so on. And now if we run, I don't know, let's say, you know what, I'm going to run them all. If you run this function from the last video on the G-type object, widget, container, and bin, and so on, we will see better those IDs. Let's see. Yes, as you can see here, let me put a bigger number here, 35, to have it more better aligned, minus 35. And now let's see, notify its ID is 1. Yes, of course it's 1 because this is the first signal in the top hierarchy. And then we have the signals from GTK widget. As you can see, we have here different from there. If I go now to the delete event right here, you see it is 66, which is true, and the destroy, where is it? Because we are working with, we need to find it at some point. Destroy right here. This is 35, which is true, and of course the realize was 61, if I'm not wrong. Now the button release event was 61, which is true. And then the same story goes for the GTK container. It has 4 signals, for 107 to 110, And of course the GTK window has also from 151 to 155. You see? So that's very important for you to understand that these signals ID which I was talking about are those IDs which are unique for your signals, the signal which with which you are working, and not for the signal which you signal ID which is returned from the GSignal connect function. That's very important for you to understand this difference. That being said, thank you guys for watching. If you like it, please subscribe, share with your friends and neighbors, and until next time, see you guys.